Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to Facebook Live. It is the 26th of January, year 2022. Actually, kind of amazing day for people from India because it is Republic Day in India today. So to all those that are in India or from India, happy Republic Day.
Happy day.
And I'm going to get started. We are joined by members of our panel. April is here, who is a psychic and a healer, as well as a spiritual teacher. Good evening, April. And then we have Eileen, who is a mindfulness instructor and is always posting on our Facebook group about mindfulness meditations in virtual reality, as well as on Zoom. So please feel free to subscribe to her meditation practices. She even joins us and leads sessions on Fridays when we have meditations, or pops in on Sunday, as well as whenever we have workshops. Eileen is a session leader on our workshops as well. And just a reminder to everyone, we do have a workshop scheduled for the 19th of February and 20th of February. I will send a reminder for everyone. Repost the post. It is posted as a featured post on our, or what would be called the announcement on the group page. So please check that out. Then we also have Kelly here, who's our Qigong teacher, and one and only Qigong teacher, as well as a spiritual teacher. So good evening, Kelly. And then we're joined by Michelle, who is a fellow member. Good evening, Michelle. And then Patricia's here as well, who's become regular on the Facebook Live Q&A, as well as Marla. Good evening, Marla. And Ken. Good evening, Ken. So today I've been it's a topic that I've been wanting to bring up for the past 2-3 weeks. I did not let you all know, like, do you all remember, like in December sometime, Kelly had an issue with his internet connection? And right after that, like we were talking to Kelly about improving his internet connection, or the cold weather not affecting his internet connection. And I actually had problems with my internet connection. I had to call, I use Frontier here in the US. We have Verizon, AT&T, Frontier, and Spectrum, the largest ISPs for home residential internet services. And so I was like, I don't know if these Zoom sessions are going to work and the group meditations are going to work. And if Marla remembers, in one of the group meditations while watching the video, she actually said, it's just whirling. I cannot really watch the video, but I can hardly see, but I can hear him. And this is the interpretation of the video. So that was when I experienced a state of grace. Because I don't know how, for those 2 weeks to 2.5 weeks, because it got fixed. And look at the amazing fact that Wednesday is the Facebook Live Q&A, and my internet connection got fixed on Tuesday, the 3rd of January, right? So I had issues. So I was like kind of, and then Ashok has been talking about putting things in the gratitude journal. So I actually have started writing. Like I would think about it, but now I've like literally started writing gratitude. Like, what am I grateful for in the day? So today I want everyone to talk about grace. Isn't there grace that we never had an issue? It was 2.5 weeks and we never had an issue. We held all our group meditations in those 2.5 weeks. we held, it was right after Christmas, I think, right before Christmas. Kelly had the issue, and it was right after Christmas that I had the issue. But I never told anyone that I was having internet issues. I just kept up. Like if it would happen, the same thing, honoring the present moment. If I'm supposed to hold the Facebook Live Q&A, nothing is going to happen, and the Zoom session will work. So April, you want to get started? Grace in the past, grace in this moment. That there is so much grace, effortless grace available to us, right?
There is. I think it takes a level of awareness and a level of presence and acceptance to experience it, an allowance to let it happen. Like you allowed the internet to be somewhat broken, but the grace allowed it to work, allowed it to connect and to happen, and then be miraculously fixed on the third, right? So I was trying to think of some times, when that specifically has happened, and I can't think of any at the moment, but I know that that's happened in my life. I'm sure it's happened a million times. For some reason, I'm not thinking of an exact one, but grace does happen. Gratitude, practicing gratitude. It's more about focusing on what the positives and what you do have, and what, making the best out of the situation. It's not just making the best out of the situation. It's honestly changing your perspective to see the good in the situation versus seeing all the problems and all the bad. And then we get into the part about projection. So if you had the internet problem and then you thought, oh, I'm going to have internet problems and it's never going to connect, and then people are going to, then that's exactly, what would manifest, right? So I think grace and gratitude go together, and faith go together, that things are going to work out, they're going to happen. So what I will do is, as everyone's talking, I'll see if I can, I know I have times of grace in my life, but for whatever reason, an example is not coming to me at the moment, but I'm sure one will after I hear everybody talk.
Awesome. Thank you so much, April, for reaffirming that. Michelle, did you want to give an example of where grace, effortless grace, was available? Thank you.
April, totally agree with you, first of all. I think it's spot on. Yeah, I think the grace and the gratitude and the trust that that no matter what, everything is going to work out. Sorry, that was mom calling. That everything is going to work out, And I don't know if I mentioned, I think, yeah, one example comes to mind. 2 years ago, I was hiking up here, and it was the summertime, and I had to hike 2.5 miles into the falls. And I was with a friend of mine, and as I was trying to get to the falls, there was this huge log that I had to crawl over or crawl under. I decided to crawl over, and I had a backpack on. And as I was going over the log, kind of like a horse straddling it, I slipped. The log was wet. I slipped and went back on my back. And I was startled. The backpack was on behind me, and there was a bed of rocks that I fell back on. And as I got up, I just got up really, really quickly. And all of a sudden, I see my finger, my fourth finger, totally cut open down to the tendon. And it was bleeding profusely. There's no calling 911 at this point because you're into the trail. And my friend had this random white towel that she was like, I guess, wiping the sweat off her forehead, and she was just carrying it. So We wrapped it really fast. She took off her shoelace. We made a tourniquet, and I had to walk down 2.5, 3 miles with my hand in the air so that the blood wouldn't continue to bleed. So during that whole time, I was just very, very still, very present. I had started off, we were in a really good space, and it was just a great hike. And I could have let fear run me wild at that point, thinking of how am I going to get down there? And then to get out of where we were, it's like an hour drive to get to the nearest ER or urgent care. So I had a good amount of time just to sit with that fear, or what could have been fear. And I just knew, look, whatever is going to happen is going to happen. I'm going to get down there and everything's going to be fine. Whatever is meant to be is meant to be. I didn't know if I was going to need surgery. At that point, I don't know. My finger was dislocated. I didn't know, but my finger was dislocated, and it was to the white. I could see the white of my, and so she was more nervous than I was. And I was just like, do you need a break? Take 2 seconds break. I said, I can't stop because I'm running on adrenaline. So it took me maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours to walk out of there, got into the car, and she called her husband, and her husband happened to know the urgent care center, who was the physician that was an ER doctor back in Ohio that she happened to have just moved here, and she called her, send her over right away. I went over, got my tetanus shot. She looked at it, took x-rays, sent me to an orthopedist, and she gave me pain medication. I mean, which I did not take. And I just, let whatever happened was going to happen. And I just didn't let the fear go over me. I went to the orthopedist, didn't need any kind of surgery, and just needed to set it. And they obviously had to put the bone back into place, and went into therapy. And, I couldn't even bend the finger at the beginning. And it's still there as a reminder that, I have the scar there, and it's still stiff. And it's my reminder of how to live in grace, right? Even when you're injured or whatever, and so for me, it's kind of like a, one of those battle scars that you have that you're proud of. For me, because it was an example of, at another moment, I could have just flipped out and, let the fear just take over. So it was one of those moments where I was like, okay, and then I looked back, and I actually wrote a Facebook. I don't write a lot on my Facebook page, but I really wrote a post a few years ago, just saying how the synchronicity of events, that she had that white towel, that we were able to find the doctor, that my friend's husband knew, that I was sent to the orthopedist, and that I didn't need the surgery. So it was like, and I didn't even get a hospital. I didn't even get a bill. I was expecting a bill. I never even got a bill. It was like, and that's the grace of it, right? I was able to stay anchored in that space, did not let the fear run me over, and I was able to stay calm and just allowed. And for me, that was a huge lesson in presence. So always grateful for that challenge, because it gave me the opportunity to practice, So that was my story. My 2 cents.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Michelle. And I think that is one of the things when we are that surrendered, what we recognize is the synchronicity of the towel being with the friend instead of overlooking it.
Oh no. And then I had my backpack. My head could have hit the rock. It could have been so much worse. But I felt like I had that backpack to break the fall. And it wasn't like 6 feet. It was just like a 2 feet thing. But so many things that I saw after the event. And I'm like, oh, this is grace. This is just, so thankful. And thankful that I didn't get more severely injured. And, because you hear stories. Like random crazy stuff that happened on the hikes. So
thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I was showing the writing of it, Ashok in our group meditation actually said that he has recently started writing at least 5 gratitude what he's grateful for that day, right before he goes to bed. So I don't really do it right before I go to bed. Whenever I feel grateful, I write it down. And the writing of it is kind of different because so all these 2 years I kept saying, this is how, like just looking at the same situation and how the way we say it, like Michelle saying the white towel was synchronistic, right? I always, for the past few years, said, "Oh, I have a parking garage on the fourth floor that doesn't have the very last floor does not have a roof, so I can go walk there out in the open, and I'm not exposed to anybody else." So I kept saying, "I'm like in this space constantly for the past few years, right?" The other day, just because I've been writing the gratitude, writing it out, I am so grateful for this open space, that I have the open space. And just that, I could feel a shift in my vibrational energy. Like I was so excited about walking that day. And from then on, like every day that I walk on around on that garage. So looking at our present moment and seeing that grace, seeing the grace in the white towel, seeing the grace in the fact that we have an open space where we can walk and there's sunlight, right? Having the sunlight and you're safe in the middle of a pandemic. So thank you. The same way, the grace of having a pandemic and we are allowed to work from home, right? So
Yeah, you don't take anything for granted. You see the little things. You're able to see that when you
yes,
live from that space.
perfect. Thank you. Grateful for that pointer. I know Eileen loves her gratitude. You want to say something, Eileen? Is she on mute? I don't think we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. There you go.
So bizarre. I think that actually happened the other day too. And I wasn't aware until much later. I was just going to say that I would speak on it, but interesting because last year, 2021, my mission for that year was to give gratitude and grace. That was kind of like what I was working on because of the situation that we were in with the pandemic. And just always kind of bringing it back to being grateful for everything that is, doesn't matter what it is, but being grateful for it. And having the ability not just for myself, like giving myself grace, but offering others grace, the parents of my students in this, challenging situation that we're all being put in, administrators, coworkers, family members, especially myself, because things don't always go as planned or expected, and just doing, the best that you can in the present moment. And so it was interesting that you brought up both of those things because that's something that is just kind of part of my everyday now. Because for a year I worked on being really having an intention for both of those things. I have gratitude practices I've talked about multiple times, writing, sharing, whether it be verbally or on social media, but just expressing gratitude for really all that is, even the challenging times. The other thing is, as far as like a experience, one that came to mind was something that happened earlier today at work. A similar, I guess, situation that's been brought up here before, but I had somehow missed an email at work, like missed an important email that I had a meeting today at like a time that was a really strange time because I was already teaching. Like I was with kids, I couldn't go to a meeting. And I had missed it somehow. And then all of a sudden it just like, I got one of those like random calendar reminder things that come. They're always like 10 minutes before the event. So I didn't even have any time whatsoever to obviously prepare because I have 10-year-olds in front of me. And here I just found out I have to walk out the door. And it was just like fully bringing myself into the present moment. And it was offering myself grace in that moment for missing it, owning up to the fact that I had obviously, made a mistake, and just calmly sending off, an email to all, participants that this is obviously not something that can take place right now because I have 30 eyeballs, 30 sets of eyeballs looking at me. And it just kind of like played out really smoothly because, one person responded, they're sending someone. The kid part was a little bit more challenging for me to handle because I had, 7 people freaking out because I'm leaving suddenly. And, but it was like, I got there. I was late, but I got there. We did what we needed to do and the kids were okay. It ended early. So I was back with my class and they were able to, it kind of flowed, and kind of like what Michelle's saying, it's like, it was chaotic and had the potential to be a total, I don't want to say the word, hot mess. I'll say that. And it didn't end up being that way. It just ended up being very, just kind of smooth. And I think it's just because, having gratitude for the fact that I saw it happened. And also, big thing was giving myself grace because I had to, forgive myself in that moment for somehow, missing something so important. But
Did you feel more of it like when you were not feeling well in November, December timeframe? How did you feel like around that time?
well, I did feel it, but I was actually just telling somebody about this earlier today. That there's like a time frame that I was sick. I was sick for like 6 weeks, but there was like a period of maybe about a week. They're like, I don't even remember it really at all. Probably was literally sleeping the entire like day and night, just getting up to maybe take sips of water. So there's a period that I don't really remember. I do, I have like a tracker on my phone for when I meditate. And so I remember thinking like after all was over, the really bad parts of like 4 weeks were over. I remember looking back at that to think, man, did I even meditate? Like, I don't even but sure enough, like I did. It was usually like later in the evening. But I remember thinking kind of in those moments of like, there's nothing I can do to change this. Yes, I'm not feeling well. Yes, my kids are sick. Yes, I'm missing work, but not getting consumed with like worry or anxiety or fear or anything like that. Just this is what's happening right now. This is, meant to happen for, some reason. And it's not going to end badly. It's just going to be like, it's just happening, allowing myself to go through it with as much grace as possible, because my old self, I would have been a disaster. I would have been worried and scared about missing so much work. I would have been fearful of, my kids being sick. I would have, really struggled with not being at work. That would have really, really messed me up. But not at all, not at all this time. And I was grateful for the experience and the ability to be able to be home and just be. It's what I really needed.
And do you feel like a different person after it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's changed you, right?
Oh, absolutely. My boss came in yesterday. She popped in just to kind of see how I was feeling because it was rough. And I don't even think I've seen her maybe once since coming back, and I've been back for a few weeks now. She came in and she said, just checking to see how you're doing. And I was like, actually, I feel really good. I do. Like, I feel really good. And I said, and it's funny because you don't know exactly when the moment happened where suddenly you're not feeling sick anymore. And for me, even when I was sick, I was trying to be present and just be in the moment with whatever came up. And so I think it's even almost harder for me to know exactly when it changed. Um, but I told her, like, I can go upstairs now. Like, I can walk up steps. I can, I don't have to use the elevator. I could read a chapter and poems to my class out loud. Like, I could just talk without, you know, not being able to breathe or having, issues. And I said, no, I feel really good. And I've felt really good for weeks now. Tired, but I'm tired because of the lack of peace that comes with just being a teacher during a pandemic.
Beautiful. Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
that example. Effortless grace is always available to us. Patricia, did you want to talk about this?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
When I think about grace, I think that I feel it every time I'm in the present moment. Every time I really feel that I'm not this phenomenal world, that I'm not my body, I'm not the event, and what many times brings me to it is my stress level. If I feel something that my heart is beating very hard, fast. So now when I practice enough, thanks to all of you, the meditation, and I also write the journal with gratitude. It's been for a few months now. So I'm noticing how many things just work out, how many things, events just were here, to support me, not to, make me suffer. And so I kind of open up myself to feeling grace by being present in that moment. And more, and then I noticed that every single little things can be a grace, having those beautiful vegetables and fruit that are so colorful that I can put in my smoothie and drink it every morning to heal my body. It's just so natural. And what I also feel sometimes as grace, it's when in a moment of stress, like Michelle said in April, that something else comes instead. Like your mind tries to get you stressed out, but then stepping out and all of a sudden that almost like a voice, you're okay. And then all of a sudden it's like a light, someone turning a light on. And it's just that effortless, something just come up. And I remember Michelle was talking about the weekend when her car ended up in the ditch. So that was such an amazing example, right? just stayed calm. And all of a sudden the other cars came, it helped them out. It's just almost like we allow angels almost in form of other people or just the way situation work out to help us. So I think that self-compassion also that Eileen was talking about, it's that it's coming out of, I think, grace. I'm not sure which one comes first, but I think that being present here and now, like really being aware, that's what opens up the grace coming. And we are also capable of giving it to others. It's almost like the state of grace is there. We just need to plug it in or something. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. I've talked about it during the group meditation. I think Krishnamurti says it's like the innocence of the immeasurable, or the immensity of the otherness. We can feel it, like when the grace is there. Like it almost is take quality to it, that it is available. Always, the power is within me and all around me, as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, right?
Yeah, it's very hard to describe it. It's better to say what it's not, right? That it's what is. It's just, it's the experience of it that is so sweet and so, you're home, you're safe. It's just all those beautiful feelings, but it's, yeah, you can really put them together as one. It's grace.
Thank you, Patricia. Kelly, did you want to say something about this? Your 2 cents? Lots of change.
Grace is an interesting topic. For me, it's actually something that I learned an awful lot about, dealing with asthma attacks and also the pain, the constant pain in my fingers. Basically walking around for half life, feeling like someone had hit my fingers with hammers, kind of thing. So to me, grace is about surrender and letting go. And it's that feeling of deep gentleness that arises when you do let go, when you surrender to the moment. And I've got images of me lying face down on the snow-covered ground, trying to get the air around my mouth and nose warm so that my cold-induced asthma attack would stop. And how frightening that was as a kid to not have any control, to not have any sense of power or ability to do anything except to just accept what was happening and that I could die. It was it's sort of one of those things where I've been talking to my partner and their kids about how different it is watching them grow through things, because growing up as a kid with my asthma and the constant pain in my hand, my fingers, I didn't have the luxury of certain emotional spaces because I was constantly having to relax my mind and be aware of where my hand was, where my body was, what I was doing all the time, so that I wouldn't trigger an asthma attack or I wouldn't hit my hand. And out of that awareness came, out of those experiences, developed a for me, very loud appreciation of that space of surrender, of that feeling of softening my mind. To me, it's a very physical thing where the tension in my body leaves and everything dissolves. In Taoism and in Qigong, there's a lot of talk about dissolving the blocks of energy in the body. And to me, dissolving tension in the body is the same thing as dissolving tension in the mind. And that's been my personal experience. And again, my unique circumstances of having to survive asthma attacks, and the pain in my fingers. guys sort of see, I still have scar tissue on the tops of my fingers. I can feel everything. I can tap my screen and it doesn't hurt or anything like that. But up until about 23 or 24 were sort of like the age when my fingers stopped cracking every spring and winter and bleeding all the time. So it was, you know, a very, very strong constant. Every once in a while, there are events in my life. When I was 17, the experience of almost dying in a car accident with my brother on icy gravel roads out in the country, because there was loose gravel sitting on top of the ice, and we basically hit it and fishtailed and spun around a couple times and then flew into the ditch. And there was this distinct moment that I remember feeling where I'm just laughing at the punchline. I'll get to it in a second. There's a distinct moment where I remember going, "Oh, that's it, I'm dead," because it was such a violent experience. It was so sudden. It was so jarring that there was no thought. There was no anything other than, okay, that's it. And then the car stopped. The world stopped. And I opened my eyes, and my brothers, you know, were on the passenger side of the car. I'm like, you know, buried in my side of the car is buried in the snow. My brother's hanging from a seatbelt above me and holding onto the steering wheel. And this is my sense of humor. And my immediate response was like, wow, that was fun. Can we do that again? And my brother sort of growled some swear words at me and just like, you know, say, no, we're not doing that again. And my brother's story is, you know, my brother's perspective is very poignant, because the way we hit the snow and you got to understand, these country roads, big, huge ditches, 15 feet of snow. And the way we hit the edge of the road launched us through the air. There was literally 2 meters of perfect, pristine snow between the road and where we hit. And there's this huge crater. And where we hit was basically on the roof of the passenger side of the car where I was sitting. And when I undid my seatbelt and went to bring it out over, my hand passed over my head, and the roof of the car was literally, you know, maybe 2 inches from the top of my head. So if we had been going any faster, or if the car had deviated slightly, the roof of the car probably would have hit my head. So that moment of surrender in that event is still very loud to me today, because and especially physiologically afterwards, I couldn't sleep for 3 days because my whole system was buzzing, partly in shock and partly because of the intensity of the experience of feeling surrender so loudly. And this is one of the reasons why I am so dedicated to teaching physical disciplines, is because of this experience having given me such a strong framework for understanding my nervous system in these types of moments, in these spaces that, you know, psychologists talk about, trainers talk about. I'm going, yeah, oh yeah, I get those. I understand that, because through feeling the body, through listening to the feeling, you know, we have all this information that comes in through these moments of grace. And it is through our bodies that we learn to understand the information of those spaces, the feeling of those spaces, like the state of flow that gets talked about an awful lot. One can train themselves, discipline themselves to be open to those spaces, to feel those moments where you have that choice to either surrender to anxiety, fear, anger, judgment, separation from your heart, from being present, or you can surrender to the moment and be present and allow yourself to be filled with grace in those moments, and allow yourself to dissolve the tension and the separation between yourself and the present moment. So there are other experiences, but my brother and I sort of had that kind of relationship growing up where I'd be like, that was like the most awesomest, funnest, bestest 3-second ride of my life. I'm telling you. But I'm okay never doing it again. Again, like the physiological point of reference for feeling these spaces, I believe very strongly is incredibly important. When when I get into the space of doing healing, I find myself always in that same space. So when April, if I may talk about sending you some healing last week, that first time, I haven't done distance healing in a while. I mean, I've done it on my dad, but he's, Mennonite and doesn't talk about it. So it was wonderful to get your feedback, because when I do healing work, I feel that space. And the first time I sent you some healing energy to work on your neck, I was very focused and very much in that space for a good 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So the intensity of your experience on the other end makes a lot of sense to me. And again, I was asking for clearing and asking to work with whatever space your system was available to be in, and offering you grace at the same time. So I've had I've had my partner and friends and people that I've worked on in person tell me that I don't know my own strengths. So, which is why I was saying earlier tonight, when I send you some healing energy, I'll ask for the gentler pass to happen. So, so I'm not waking you up, waking up in the middle of the night with, the intensity. Again, the physical space, the physical feeling, I believe is so strong, is so important to listen to, because it is such a strong point of reference. And it is something once you feel it in your heart, it is something that the mind cannot take away from you, because you have that point of reference. You have that feeling. It is a concrete physical experience. And that is one thing that once you have that kind of experience, and once you have that point of reference, nothing can take that away from you. So again, being present, being with yourself, being in your heart is so very important. And this is why I train, this is why I do Qigong, and this is why I do healing work and share with people, is because it reinforces my toolbox. It reinforces and continuously validates that, yes, I am on the right path, that yes, I am doing what honors my heart, what honors myself. And goosebumps. When I am in that space of grace, it further reinforces that feeling in that space of grace in my heart, and it grows it. It's like watering your own little garden. And for me, yeah, it's just like, yeah, some of my experiences have been car accidents, but it's, again, that moment where it's just like, okay. And, you let go of all expectations and assumptions and possibilities, and you surrender to that moment. And they're wonderful, beautiful moments. And it's wonderful to hear everyone talk and share about them, because these experiences are super important to understand one's own path. And I'll leave my 2 cents there, and my hay penny and stuff like that. So
In the jar, in the penny jar.
penny jar, yeah. Is it almost full yet? No.
It's almost, in 2 years, it's getting almost full. Thank you, Kelly. That was incredibly amazing. And thankfully, you didn't make it into a victim story of why me, why did I get into, because the other side can happen, right? Instead of looking at it as grace, we may go, why did I get into the car accident? Why did I get the asthma?
It
You want to
was
speak about that? Thank you.
actually that's a really good point. You know, in the past when I was younger, I have had those trains of thought, but again, for me as a young kid growing up, having the asthma attack, being like dropped to my, dropping to the ground, having to do nothing but focus, and like the constant pain in my fingers, and just sort of getting used to it. There's nothing I can do about my fingers. There's nothing I could do about my asthma. I didn't know until I learned qigong that I could. But like my fingers, it's like there's nothing I can do about it. I mean, still to this day, it's like when I start growing them back, you guys will be the first to know. um, and yeah, again, it's been both a blessing and a challenge to then sort of translate my own experience and witness others going through things that, as I said, like I didn't have that luxury of, I guess, growing up or emotionally maturing in the normal way, through slow progression. It's like, no, it's like, we're gonna drop you to your knees, you're gonna like cover your face and huddle on the ground for the next half hour, or you might die. And there's no middle ground. It's like, having to surrender to that. I was very fortunate to have very supportive friends, a couple of really close friends that who would just sit with me, stop what they're doing and sit with me to make sure that I was okay. And it's just like when my fingers too, it's just like, bashing my fingers. There's a couple of times in school where I, accidentally hit them, and my world would just go blank because the pain was so intense. I couldn't do anything except like kneel and cry on the ground because there was nothing else to do. And then there's like that kind of pain, there's no way to control it. It's like it just races through your body and you respond. And that car accident that I had with my brother, or the rolling of the car, it was really unfortunate too, because it was such a beautiful little Volkswagen Jetta that was like a mint, beautiful, no problem car. We'd had it for almost 10 years, never had a problem with it, and then this happens, and of course we needed to get a new car after that. But it was that moment when I spent like the next 3 days after that where like my entire system was buzzing and I didn't know what was going on. And it was sort of like the same deal where it was such an intense experience that for 3 days I felt nothing other than the intensity. And I had this space of pure clarity of feeling that surrender, that space of grace for 3 whole days. And I didn't have like the idea of like, oh, why me? Like, poor me or whatever, never ever entered my awareness. And again, it's such a pivotal experience in my life at age 17 to have that kind of profound space of grace. And yeah, honestly, put on, until you brought it up, I had actually never thought about that. I'd actually never considered, oh, poor me, or why. And I guess that's, goes to having to already deal with my fingers and my asthma, but I never, again, I joke about it with my brother. It's like, hey, it's like, we're gonna like go for another ride today, or we're gonna, he'd smack me, it's like, jokingly tell me to shut up and stuff. Yeah, I didn't. It was just, wow, okay. Well, that's different. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I honestly hadn't even thought of that.
Because that can lead to the limiting belief, like the mind projection of bad things always happen to me, bad things always happen to me, and then constantly bad things really do happen, right?
Yeah, and
So-
I guess, living in the country, growing up, having to deal with snow, having to deal with bad weather, having, the car slide into the ditch and having to dig it out, part of me was just used to that as being normal. So there wasn't ever, like when I was younger, it's like, oh, this is like, GERS, I'm gonna be late for school or whatever. But I guess by that time, part of it is just, well, that's just living in the country. It's bound to happen at some point. And when it did happen, I guess, I'd it was always a risk driving on the icy gravel roads. It was always a risk. So when it did happen, I think part of me was actually relieved. It's like, oh, there it is. Okay, check off that box. Okay, we're good.
This is what happens in cold weather in the country.
Yeah, on
Accidents of
gravel
this kind.
roads, icy. Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah.
Thank you, Kelly. Marla, you've been listening very carefully. You want to talk about grace? I'm sure you've experienced quite a few.
Oh my, oh my. Oh my.
It's a beautiful topic.
Oh, it is. And I could go back in my life and I can find them. The one that is most salient for me. It was actually more like a year's long worth of grace, but it was in 1989, 89, spring of 89. I had a daughter in college. I had a son was a junior in high school. I had a daughter who was, I'll try not to make this too drag out, but it's nice to know the situation because then the meaning of it becomes clear. And I had a daughter who was a sophomore and a daughter who was a freshman, and I had a 2.5-year-old. So I had 5 children. 3 were at home. Actually, 4 were at home. I was in a financial point where I had been drawing. I lived in a little town in Colorado Mountains, and little town called Kremling. I don't know if any of you would never have heard of it. 7,000 feet altitude. We had been living a life of hardship for several years. And so I was accommodated to that and accustomed to that. And I took that for granted because it wasn't any different than anything else that I had ever lived. But all of a sudden there was no income. We had not made a payment on the house in 9 months. We knew that was going to come to an end eventually. There was going to be a foreclosure there. My marriage was, well, in all effects, it was dead. We were still living together. He was home some of the times, and sometimes he would bring money and sometimes he wouldn't. So we were at a desperate financial situation, and I realized that I could not go on. I could not continue with this, but I had a 2.5-year-old, and I wanted to be home with her so bad. So I was looking for alternatives. I thought, no, what can I do? What can I do? So when I made the decision, you don't need all the details. It would take another hour. But I had a BA in elementary education, and I thought, I think what I probably could do is I could teach if I could, but it was 15 years old. So I didn't know if I could still, if it would still work for me to teach. But it was middle of May, so I thought maybe by the next school year in September. Well, I was being unrealistic, but I didn't know that. I called the nearest college and found out that all I needed really was 5 credits. 5 credits. And I needed to pass an oral competency exam, which is just to give a speech, and you could do that. So I made the decision to leave. My son went off for the summer to stay with his cousins. And so therefore I had my 2 youngest daughters and my 2.5-year-old. And we put ourselves in the car. I had one remaining welfare check to come. I could only draw for 1 more month, and I had that to come. And I had left a forwarding address at the post office, and I had given the office the address too. So I was fully confident that eventually I would get that, probably by the end of June or July. And I put myself in the car with a crib, a TV. Have to have your TV, I guess. I don't know. A couch that made out into a bed. And I got in my car, my Suburban, and we took off. And I remember this is the house I'd raised my children in. 3 of 4 of them were born there. I felt like I was running away from home, is what I felt like. And I actually was. I couldn't think too much about it because the more I thought about it, the more anxious I became. So I made the decision. I knew I couldn't stay, so I had to go. You know, when you have to do something, you just have to do it. You just have to do it. And that's the way I felt. I got in the car, we loaded it up, and we're driving out of Kremling, and we're driving down the highway away from the house. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm leaving. I wonder what it looks like. And I realized that if I turned my head around and looked back, that I would go back. You know, it's kind of like there's a Bible story about that somewhere. But anyway, I said, no, you cannot look back. You do not look back. And as I said that to myself, my mind was, I'm sorry. My mind was so anxious that I had an image come up in my mind of all 4 wheels on my Suburban falling off like that. The image in my mind was the wheels are going to fall off because I had no idea what I was going into. I had no idea where I was going to have enough money to live. I had put aside $300. I had $300 in $1 bills that I had squirreled away in previous months. I put those in my pocket and we took off with 1 check to come. I didn't know how I was going to pay the rent. I did know I was going to live in student family housing. And had I given in to that fear of the wheels falling off and this not being able to work and me not being able to do it, it would have been a disaster. But for some reason, and now I can call it grace. At the time, I wasn't thinking in that perspective. I was focusing on what I was doing. I was driving down the road. And now I see I was in presence, total presence. I had a 2.5-year-old over here in my car seat, 2 daughters in the back. And I was trying very hard not to transfer my anxiety to them. I wanted this to be a positive thing. I said, we're going on an adventure. We're going to go to a new place. And as far as I knew, it was only going to be for the summer because I didn't know what was going to come after that. So we're going off on a summer trip. Okay. And there's just so much more to this. I get to the student family housing, and I said to the lady after she helped me get my keys and get registered, I said, and I'm kind of cringed as I said, now I need to know about rent. When do I have to pay rent? Because I knew that would take all of my $300 at least. And she said, oh, we don't have to worry about that. It'll just go on your bill and you'll get that bill in August at the end of the semester. Now that was a moment of grace. That right there, okay? The other thing I hadn't done yet was bother to register. I hadn't registered in college yet. I had no way to pay for college. So after I got everybody moved in, I went to college the next day and I walked into the financial aid office. I walked up to the window and I said to Jane, I remember her name. Oh, I remember this woman. She's an angel. Okay. I walked up to her and I said, I want to go to school here, but I don't have any money. She reached under the counter and she pulls out a piece of paper and she puts it down in front of me and she says, here, fill this out. I said, what is this? And she says, it's a loan application. I said, oh, I could get a loan? How was I going to pay it back? who knows? You know, who worries about that, right? You just do what you have to do. And I had a $6,000 loan then that was going to get me to the end of the summer. I didn't know that that was not going to get paid to me until the end of the summer. None of it. I had to finish my coursework before I could get any of that. So that's the next piece of little, you know, building up the drama, so to speak. And I didn't have, that's just one more little thing. I knew I needed a job. And so I did not have money. I'd already been to Goodwill, Salvation Army. I had done everything I could to feed my kids and completed my coursework in great joy. I was in great joy that I completed my coursework. And I go to the food stamp office. I'm sitting there in the chair going, I've got to get a job. I've got to get a job. And I look up on the wall in front of me is a poster. Applicants needed for a bookkeeping job, and the price was $800 a month.
Wow.
With insurance. With insurance. And the closing date was the next day. So I went, I took the test, I came out second, I got the job, and that's the second moment of grace. I mean, that was a really long, I call it a black tunnel of anxiety that I went through. Constant feeling of this stress. But I stayed in the moment. I kept going, what am I going to do next? What do I have to do next? I was driving home one night with all my children after the summer was over, and we had to get another house because student family housing wasn't going to be big enough for my son to come. And I'm going, oh God, please help me. I don't know what to do next. And I'm praying. Okay, I hadn't really been praying, but finally I'm praying, and I heard nothing. I heard nothing. And I went, oh, you're turning it back to me, aren't you? And that was my answer. You know, I knew I had to depend on me. I mean, universe was teaching me all of this time with grace, unsolicited grace. I didn't have to work to get that grace. It's like what you call what do you call that? You call it
Effortless grace.
effortless grace. And it was, I felt it as a miracle. I was incredibly grateful for every single moment. I got a full scholarship my fall semester. It was just effortless grace. And that was the biggest turning point in my entire life. And I did not think of it in the terms that we use today in this setting. But yes, I was in presence. I was trusting life, but I didn't think of it that way. I was just doing what I knew I needed to do. And I had the sense that it was going to be okay. I had a sense deep down that it was going to be okay. But I didn't know how it was going to be okay. I didn't know what I was going to do. But it did work out smoothly and beautifully. And that's my grace. And from that moment on, the song Amazing Grace has been my favorite song. You know, I don't know if you know that hymn, but it's a beautiful Catholic hymn. It's a beautiful hymn, and it expresses it quite clearly. And I'm ever so grateful. And I believed in miracles. After that, I believed in miracles. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marla. I feel 1989 is the year that I moved to the US.
Really?
And exactly. And so it was a miraculous. That was when President Reagan was the president, or around that time.
I think it was Reagan, I think.
Right?
It was Reagan, yeah.
It was something about this country. It was an amazing time, because I remember that semester, just like you're saying, right? That semester I had the tuition and living expenses for that semester, but 1990, like spring, I didn't have any money. And in university, you go, and for international students, the only way you can gain employment, you cannot go work anywhere because you don't have the valid visa. So the only thing you can do is work within the university.
Yes.
And I walked into the computer center there, and I was like, I was so shy. I was so painfully shy. And this person interviewed me. Every question that he asked, I said, no, I've never done that. I've never worked with computers. I've never done networking. I've never touched a computer. And then he said, okay, you're hired. And that was $1,000 a month,
Yep.
right? 250 went to tuition per month, because for 4 months you paid the $1,000 in state tuition. 250 went to rent, and we lived on $500. Can you imagine living in $500 a month?
Well, that's kind of what
That
we
was so
did.
much. That was so much, right?
Yeah.
I can't imagine living in $500 now, but we lived on $500 a month, and we ate well. We did laundry. We did everything, right? In $500.
Mhm.
That's so much grace in that.
Oh my.
Till today,
I feel like I was carried along. I was, maybe the wheels did fall off. I don't know, but I was carried. My family was carried. The whole family was carried through that pivotal, miraculous time.
thank you, Marla.
Mhm.
Ken, you're the last person to speak. I think we've been talking for an hour, so I'm sure you have a lot of stories that Marla's gone into so much detail.
Yes, and there's so much that I have already said. There's so much I can say. And I just feel so grateful, with so much gratitude, that everything that is happening in my life, and I'm at a point in my life where I could feel this presence power. And I know I'm not alone. It's probably the first time in my life that I can be totally by myself and feel very comfortable, because I was very, very dependent on the world, because I grew up with fear. And I now really can understand why there were so many things in my life that I stopped growing at a young age. One of them was alcoholism, and the other one was fear. And so it's something where, and then I've had different things happen to me. Well, one experience was in 1988 when I had a white light experience. I actually prayed to die. I couldn't take the pain anymore from things that were happening. And I had a miraculous shift with that experience. And it was such a loving experience that I knew I wasn't alone. And that perpetuated and propelled me to say, okay, no matter what happens, I have to continue going forward. And there was a voice at that time, and it said, I will be going through other experiences. And there will be a time I will understand why, and I will be doing something else later on, different than what I'm doing at that point, and you will know when. And so 7 years ago, I actually retired from having a business for 43 years. And I knew that that was the time to do something else. And what it was to learn to love myself and to understand what that meant. And because I was always looking for someone to do that for me. I did not have any idea what that meant. So in all my experiences, I've learned a long time ago to follow my intuition and realize that everything that's happening the way it is, there's a reason for it. And I started asking questions quite some time ago, you know, what's my purpose? Why am I here? Why am I going through this? And all these questions started to get answered. And it was all through grace. And now in my life, I'm really having so much gratitude and being so thankful for just being able to breathe, wake up in the morning. I'm healthy. I'm able to eat. I'm able to afford things. And it's something where now I'm living in an apartment. I just sold my house. And I was always self-seeking to be somebody, to be successful, to be looked at, to be seen. And I'm realizing that I'm the only one that needs to see that. I don't need anybody else to give me that. So there's just so many things that are being developed that were undeveloped because of the fear or the unconscious beliefs or the thinking mind. And now that I'm in that presence power and really understanding that everything that's happening now, it's like I'm listening with a new ear. I'm understanding things with a totally new brain. And it's funny, I was, listening to Kelly tonight talk, showing his fingers and different things would happen. And I used to get on my knees and cry because I was so afraid and I was so much in fear and I didn't want to live. And I didn't understand. There's so many things. And it's something where I developed these ways of being because was my programming. And I thought this is just the way it is. And realizing now that it's so different. It's not that way at all. And understanding that most of my thinking were just a bunch of lies and illusions. It wasn't the truth at all. And as I untangle that, I'm realizing that there's an inner GPS inside of me, and there's a magnet. And when I am in alignment to what I need to learn by grace, I'm starting to really feel that. And there's a tug, a presence. And so I'm learning with my heart rather than my mind, in that intelligence, in the intuition, the spirit. I love, the other day I went in the woods, and I love this little story. It just happened like 4 or 5 days ago. And I have a favorite spot in the woods. And whenever I go into this section, I always have these incredible downloads. It's like a walking meditation for me. And it was snowing out, and I'm smiling, and it's such stillness. There's no one around other than all the trees. And I'm just smiling, and I'm walking, and I'm just looking. And as I look at the trees and the ground, the trees that are tilt over, the trees that are bent, they're all explaining to me what life is all about. And with the snow, I'm like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. It was like watching stars come out of the sky. And I said, I felt like I was a snowflake. And this is that whole feeling of being one with everything. Because when you're in that stillness, you can feel that interconnection. And I know that that's grace. And then I walked a little bit further, and I looked behind me, and there was a couple with a dog. And it must have been 400 or 500 feet away. And that dog was like shaking. And I knew that dog is going to run and jump on me and start licking me. And it had happened. And the people started telling the dog, and I said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. The dog knows what it's doing. It's okay. And it just jumped on me, and I loved it. I felt the love from the dog. And I know that my feeling, seeing that dog, we connected. Just like I did with the snowflakes, just like I did with the trees. When I'm in there, I'm not alone. I'm walking with God. I'm walking in this presence power, and it's like I'm soaking it all in, and I'm like a sponge. And more, I'm without a doubt, and I've said this right from the beginning, and I think of how nervous I was when I first started 4 or 5 months ago. And I'm thinking of seeing where I am now, and it's so different. I'm like fearless. And I can really listen to everybody. And it's like your story, everybody's story. And I'm like, wow. And I'm fully listening with my heart, with compassion. And at one time, I realized that my fear would be listening to something else. So that's all breaking down. It's all breaking apart. And I'm really, really feeling so interconnected with everything. And just feeling the love, just feeling like, and this is what I can really understand, this is what I've yearned for growing in my family of origin. Deep down, I always wanted a close family. I always wanted that love. So as a little boy, yes, I was supposed to get it from my parents. I didn't. So that's where the lies and the illusions came in my head, and wanting to be close to my brothers. But we were, many of them we weren't available emotionally. And so I was a very feeling and very, very sensitive little boy. And so I didn't know how to cope with that. It was almost as if there was something wrong with it in the way I grew up with it. And now it's like I have many spiritual families. It doesn't matter when I'm in this energy field, there's a presence that's in it. And I'm realizing that the spirit in you is loving the spirit in me. And that's what's alive. That's the energy field. And realizing God's in everything. And we're all a piece of that. So I'm just really acknowledging that and feeling that and understanding it and listening to each individual. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm realizing how I'm getting filled up in a way that I couldn't have before because I was in an unconscious field. I was in that mind energy. So I'm really, really, really enjoying the transitioning and just soaking it all in. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ken. I see Caesar. Good evening, Caesar. You made it.
I did. I broke down on the road, but I'm here. Great.
Let's... You won't believe it. That is our topic of discussion today. That effortless.
By the grace of God, Caesar is here.
Exactly. Our topic today is, can we look at ourselves and know that there's effortless grace available to us? Thank you, Ken. And you just gave an example of effortless grace being available. You want to speak to it, Caesar, before we wrap up?
Sure.
Thank you.
So I'm grateful to be here. So I'll just give you a briefing on what happened today. So I bought a new truck, not brand new. I bought a used truck about a month ago, and it was driving her to a job, and basically I got a blown motor. So I'm just sitting there waiting for a tow truck so we can get it towed out of here. But there's a lot more stuff that could have went wrong in the process. And the moment it happened, I didn't allow myself to have any negative feelings of this stinks. What am I going to do? I just know everything always works out. It always does. And so I tried to remain successfully in a high vibing state of gratitude. And it just carried me through my entire day without missing a beat. And a couple of people were like, dude, you're not even bummed out. I mean, it just is what it is, isn't it? It's nothing more, it's nothing less. It doesn't affect my being. In fact, nothing that happens in life really affects our very being, right? It only affects the thinker, the conscious mind, or the unconscious mind per se. And things are only a problem if we allow them to be, if we turn them into a problem. I love how Tolle says that problems are illusions. I'm a firm believer in that. The things are not good or bad until the mind makes it so. Yes, I mean, I think we spoke on this last week as well. So how do we stay in a state of, I mean, we're born into grace and it really never stops. We cover that part of our lives with the illusion of, I mean, I guess through the ego, we fall from that. And that's what brings us into other states that doesn't feel pleasant in life. And a lot of times we get addicted to the drama in life. We get addicted to the pitfalls and the suffering and the attachments to things. An attachment says a lot about staying in a state of grace and being grateful for things. Because when you don't have the attachments or the expectations of things either, when you can lose them too, as many spiritual teachers, talk about, and it's, part of the core message from every spiritual teacher. If you don't have the expectations of, outcomes, and you don't have the expectations, it's hard for things to actually, quote unquote, go wrong. If you just simply allow things to be as they are, they will unfold as they will. Nothing I could have done different would have stopped this motor from blowing. It's like, when somebody passes, I hear people a lot say, well, if I would only did this, he might still be here. No, I think when it's somebody's time, it's their time. How they go, maybe it would have been different, under different circumstances, but nah, I'm pretty sure, Source doesn't make mistakes. And when it's time to go, it's time to go. Firm believer in that. And that's the way, this intertwined web of life unfolds as we know it. Moment by moment, second by second, it just simply is what it is. Now we can do things to the best of our ability, sure, in hopes of particular outcomes. Them, we call them goals. Now, whether we actually achieve them or they manifest for us is one thing. However, when there's resistance or unacceptance of, there it is again, the expectation didn't work out as you planned, and you fall into a negative state of any kind, well, then your chances lessen for picking yourself back up and moving forward with the next moment and the next moment, the next moment. So it is important to just be happy and just stay in this, a high vibrant state. With that, you can always find gratitude in any moment, I promise, regardless what's in front of you, regardless the situation. I just believe wholeheartedly that you always have the availability and the option to be grateful if you choose to be. Because at the end of the day, it's a choice. And I believe choice is our superpower. We have the choice to remain in a state of gratitude. We have the choice not to get bummed out or let things affect us in a negative way. I chose to find good light in the situation and I pulled so many positives out of it. We immediately went to lunch, a couple of my workers, and we sat down, and it was just a good discussion, but it opened the door for other things for me, believe it or not. I don't have a whole bunch of money to go buy another vehicle. But it, like I said, there were so many things. It actually pushed me in another direction. And everything is going to be fine, perhaps better than it would have been or should have been, in different ways. I just know that truck wasn't meant to be on the road right now. Whether I get it fixed or not, we're going to find out. But I'm grateful for a million and one things. I could sit there and go on and on. Like, I'm glad it didn't happen 200 miles from home. I'm glad I didn't hurt nobody. I'm glad it wasn't loaded with a bunch of materials and tools. I could just go on and on about I'm glad it didn't, wasn't this, but I'm also glad for what is, not what wasn't or what, wasn't there or what could have been. I'm grateful for what is, the ability that I still have to be happy and grateful and remain in this state. And that's how we know we're growing, when the little things that happen to us in life don't affect us as much as they used to. Maybe I get a little depressed over the situation, for a half a day, but then something else happens in a month, and then I get, a little sad over that same situation for 10 minutes. So we can gauge on how things affect us, where we're at spiritually on our journey, and how well this practice is paying off for us. Because we know if we practice what we know, what we come to learn, what we study here, our lives are going to improve if you choose to do so and put things into play and practice what what we talked about. It's plain and simple. So I'm grateful that I got this opportunity. I'm grateful to be here today. Thank you for this opportunity.
We are grateful that you were able to make it despite a challenging day,
Yes.
Caesar.
It actually raised my state of gratitude.
That
If
speaks
makes sense.
volumes. That speaks volumes about how well you've taken the teachings and you implement them. All of you. Today has been a day of grace, right? Grace that we had this session. What I was going to say, Caesar, is that was a test. Like, we were talking about the test last week. It's kind of synchronistic that here comes an example of a test. You get a challenging life situation, the motor breaks. Now tell me, are you going to be reactive or are you going to surrender? And Kelly had just talked about how much in surrender, like almost a near-death experience, and he was surrendered, right? And here is Caesar like laying another layer of surrender. Like the topic today is surrender, that you can have the worst, what we call so-called worst type of challenge, but if you surrender, this too shall pass.
Yeah,
Right?
and it's so ironic. When I can tell, might be right there. When I was en route with my work, my friend, and the motor actually blown, 10 minutes before that happened, I was just talking about how grateful I am for this great running truck. And so when it happened, I mean, literally, it's like I walked right into that.
You changed it.
To the test. I called on the test and there it is. And so when it happened, he just looked at me like, how was I going to respond? Because this is weird. You were just saying how grateful you are for this awesome running vehicle. I mean, it ran perfect, no indications of nothing. And I spent probably 10 minutes on this journey, 5 minutes before that actually happened, talking about how grateful I was for this very truck and how strong the motor was. And ironically, that happened. So it was almost like I invited the test in some fashion. That was my conscious. Well, my tow truck is on site. So I'm going to go.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, family.
Thank you, Caesar.
I'm grateful. Stay
Much
grateful.
love. Have a
Bye-bye.
wonderful evening.
There's my baby. Bye-bye, everybody.
Infinitely grateful for all of you. Infinite gratitude and many blessings. Have a wonderful evening. Good night. Bye. Bye, Summer. Good to see you.